Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of Straight Talk Whiskey. I'm Nick here with you as always, and thanks for joining us for episode number 124. So we finally made it back around to the Scotch side of our whiskey journey, and we've got the BenRiach 10-year-old Curiositas. That's a really fun name to say. Give yourself a few passes at that. So we've got a peated single malt Speyside Scotch whiskey. And really interesting history behind BenRiach. They started in 1898, only around for about 2 years, which is quite sad. And it went sort of mothballed really until 1965. And because they had their own floor malting, some of that was used in some of the nearby distilleries that were able to still make a comeback every now and then in that 65-year history. So they weren't entirely, dead and useless, but they made a resurgence and they sort of survived the times from 1965 on, being mothballed a little bit and really making a good run of things in 2004. They've changed hands a lot in terms of the companies and different conglomerates that have owned them. So they have gone through Seagrounds, Pernod Ricard, I believe. They had their own independent company from BenRiach that they were really proud to announce. And then Brown-Forman picked them up. So they've had quite the history, but it's good to see that they're still around. Like I said, they do their own floor maltings. I believe they're only one of two in the Speyside area that still do that. And so that gives them the opportunity to have peated whiskey, unpeated whiskey, and they also dabble a little bit in the triple distilled Scotch whiskey, which I don't believe I have had from them at all. So bottled at 46% ABV. That's kind of nice. I'm starting to get into the habit of purchasing things that are only above the 40% ABV mark, because when you look at the money that you're putting into a bottle, especially when you're out here, as I always mentioned about the taxes out here are crazy. Something can retail for $65 and you end up paying upwards of 80, mid 80s after that, sometimes even higher. It's ridiculous. So you really want to be discerning, unless you just have cash to throw around, about what your money is actually buying. And so I know some other whiskey reviewers did this, and I think it's a great opportunity to really hone in on the distilleries and whiskey makers and creators that are producing things that have the customer in mind and that they're conscious about giving quality, knowing that people are spending their hard-earned money for this type of stuff. And a lot of choices are out there. And so we as discerning customers can, put that one back on the shelf and go for something else that maybe is a little bit pricier, a couple bucks pricier, but has, a label that says it's non-chill filtered, a label that says there's no caramel coloring, that it's been bottled at 46% ABV or higher. I mean, at the very least, 43%. And all these types of things, that where it actually comes from, that it's not just a product of Scotland, or if it's an Irish whiskey, a product of Ireland, which probably means that they're not themselves actually making the whiskey, they're just blending it or sourcing it from somewhere else and slapping a label on it. So you got to be discerning about that, because we know marketing out there in every facet of our lives, there's always some undermined, twisted around, mixed up marketing scheme that's going on. Something's not being said, something's not entirely truthful, or something's being exaggerated to a very large extent. So anyway, let's get into the whiskey. I don't think it's going to do it what it did before. You got a nice little pop there, but as I was pouring it out, it had this great sort of glug 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 sound, which I was hoping I could recreate. It did a little one there, but nothing too crazy. So anyway, and looking at the color, it's right on the edge of being able to tell whether it has been colored or not. When I look at it in the glass up to the light, it does look pretty pale amber, but in the bottle, it definitely looks a lot warmer in color. And even holding it up like that, and looking through just the glass. Obviously, I know the glass is different, and I know that the optics are different. But there is a sense that there might be, a little bit of caramel color, and I don't see anything on here to tell me otherwise. But that type of thing is something that I'm going to look out for, like I said, in later reviews that I do. So I thought I had seen non-chill filtered, but I also went through like a ridiculous amount of bottles at the store, picking them up, just looking at them, putting them down, looking at something else, coming back to one, and then coming back. And so the Curiositas, it's an interesting name, because when I think of that, I don't know. I don't know exactly where that derives from. Obviously curious, I want to say. But I believe that this whiskey is sort of more peated than your traditional entry-level BenRiach 10-year-old. That's what I'm gathering from that. And probably, as they say, closer to the traditional style. That would have been back in the late 1800s. Who knows? It wasn't around then, if that surprises you. So let's go in for the nose. Now, the things I love about this, peated whiskeys in general, is that it just really takes you to another place. It takes you to the coast. It takes you right next to the sea. But at the same time, you got this beautiful, like, brininess, sea salt, roasted ham, pineapple on it, sort of just, like, beautiful. Like, you can almost smell the grill marks on it. Bit of malt, not too much. It's sort of underneath all of those great, really pungent flavors like the sea salt and the brine and ham and that sort of thing. But definitely a little trickle of malt in there. So let's go in for the taste. The grilled ham and that sort of thing is definitely there, but it's not as forthcoming as it was in the nose. What you're getting in the taste is something that's more earthy when you think of peat, but not in the sense of like Ardbeg. It's not the same type of peatiness. It's earthy, but it's more on the surface earthy. It's not medicinal. It's not astringent. It doesn't have like the furniture polish, tobacco taste to it. It's a real fresh, but at the same time grounded flavor profile to it. So I'm getting more of the malt that I only got a hint of in the nose. I'm getting a little bit of this pepperiness, fresh ground pepper, which is really nice, coats the palate, and helps the finish out a little bit, because it's not overly long finish, but the pepperiness lets it, trickle away into the great beyond, if you will. So I'll take one more pass at this, and then in looking around on BenRiach's site and also on the tin in the bottle, sort of has the same literature there. They suggest a drop of water, so we're gonna put a drop of water in there. We're gonna get crazy. It's interesting. I went to look up a review the other day of this before I bought it, but it was BenRiach. Probably not even saying that right, but that's what was there. So not to be confused, BenRiach and BenRiach, beautiful names. So we've got our lovely Angel Share whiskey dropper. That was way too much, but you can tell I'm out of practice with adding the water. I'm going to be blunt about that. You probably haven't seen me put water in much whiskey lately. That's because we got to get back to the good stuff that really opens up when you put whiskey in. Don't be that person that's sitting at your at the bar with friends or something like that, having Jack Daniels or Jim Beam or something like that and ask for a separate glass of water that you can just drip in there with a teaspoon. I think it'd be hilarious to see that, but just don't be that guy. So we'll give it a little swirl and a whirl around the glass. Just let it mingle, let it open up, let it breathe, let it do its wonderful thing. But there's no time. You don't got to set a timer. You just sort of got to feel it out. When it feels right, you take another sip. I'm going to see if I can counterbalance some of my excessive waterness and just get a little grandeur back in the glass. Oh, just a little bit. Because what I nosed there was a absinthe. Or absinthe. I said absinthe because I really like absinthe. But an absence of the original nose that I got. And it shouldn't be that. It should evolve, if anything, not dissolve. And so even with adding a little bit more of the BenRiach back to it after the water, it's still pretty subdued on the palate. It's getting a little bit more of that maltiness. The pepperiness is sort of there, but it's more of a little trickle. It's more of a little nuisance than it is a nice earthy coating. It's almost like a fresh hayfield. It's got a nice sense to it. It's calming, it's relaxing. You can sort of picture a slight breeze. I don't know. Take a taste. Taste, though, that's a different story. You get a beautiful biscuity maltiness that's coming through. Slightly buttery. No more pepperiness to it. A little hint of vanilla. And a slight bit of lemon zest. Just to spice it up a little bit. But this one is really adding the bit of water. Really softens it down. Makes it nice and easy. Nice and relaxing. You don't got to worry about any of the alcohol bite getting to you. So obviously, all these things are subjective. What would I prefer? Probably just straight up 46% of it and not dilute it down anymore. I may pour myself another glass and then really do a teeny drop or two. Or even just let it sit out for, 10, 15 minutes. See if that changes anything. But, I'm pretty happy with where it's at just straight out of the bottle. So there you have it. That's episode number 124. I hope you'll join us again next week. We'll find something interesting to do. As always, if you're going to drink responsibly, and we'll see you next time.